Welcome to the 2021 EIT Manufacturing Summit. This year, the EIT Manufacturing Summit will bring together a diverse range of global thought leaders across higher education, research, industry, and public policy for 3 days of discussion and debate about key issues facing Europe's manufacturing sector. The summit is an essential forum for us to discuss and shape the future of manufacturing work. Together, we'll explore ways to keep people at the center of the industry's digital and green transformation, tackling questions like, what new skills will we need to succeed in the future? How can we bridge skills gaps? How can we attract and inspire a more diverse workforce? And how do we equip each generation of employees with the skills they need to shape the future? What will the future of work look like, and how will it feel for those involved? How can we ensure that the human-centered transformation is also a green transformation? While manufacturing is undergoing a dynamic digital transformation, it will only succeed if it is human-centered and environmentally sustainable. Now is the time to leverage the possibilities of innovation to ensure that work is purposeful, inclusive, and people-driven. We hope that you will take advantage of the summit's unparalleled networking opportunities, meet exciting startups, and learn about the latest innovations. Thank you for being a part of the future of manufacturing work.
Hello, everyone. We are live. Greetings from Berlin. My name is Karen Helmstedt, and it is a huge pleasure to welcome you to the EIT Manufacturing Summit for 2021. Well, it's been almost exactly 1 year since our inaugural summit last December, so it's high time for an update, as I'm sure many of you are thinking. Unfortunately, of course, we're still in the grip of this pandemic, and so we've had to go fully virtual once again. We're streaming live once again from the German capital, so thanks to all of you for joining us from afar. And we're delighted, of course, to bring you all together virtually to discuss the future of manufacturing work. That is our theme for this year. And let's start by considering that word, manufacture. From the Latin, manu and factura, literally meaning made by hand. Europe's manufacturing sector employs over 30 million people in some 2 million enterprises. And so I'd certainly say that's a lot of hands on deck. And the sector itself, as you all know, is currently in the midst of a dynamic digital transformation with massive changes happening in technology, for instance, not to mention the long-term impacts of the COVID crisis. So over these next 3 days, it's really about those hands that we want to talk about, because there is a social transformation underway as well. As we just heard in the video, Europe's green and digital transitions will only succeed if they're centered around people. Speed, of course, will be crucial, as Industry 5.0 is already here. We're already working alongside robots and smart machines. But it's really about them supporting human work and intelligence and not superseding it. Well, lucky for us, we humans are still the primary creators of performance and value. And humans have also really been the main source of resilience in this current crisis. So there's huge potential for manufacturing to actually drive those twin transitions, but only if all of industry and its people are on board for the journey. So in that sense, I hope we have all hands on deck for an inspiring 3 days to come. Now, before I continue, a couple of quick technical remarks. If you have any questions, at the top right hand of your screen, take a look. There should be a Q&A button on the platform. And this is where you can post them. And we will, of course, and our team will do their best to answer them as time allows. For social media, anyone out there who's part of the conversations, Twitter hashtag is once again just EITM Summit, without the year this time, EITM Summit. And be sure to follow all the conversations. Be sure to have a look around our summit platform at some point over the next 3 days. And of course, we'll have breaks for the expo area. And if you need any help at all, do be sure to just put your questions for that into the chat function, and someone will be with you shortly. Well, with that, it is time to get started. And it is a great pleasure for me to welcome a real live human here into the studio, because Klaus Beetz, the CEO of EIT Manufacturing, is here with me in the studio. Come on in, Klaus.
Hi, Karin. Nice to see you again.
Wonderful to see you too. Great. I can't believe it. Here we are doing all this virtual reality, but you are here in reality, and I'm very glad that it's happened. And joining us online from Stockholm is Cecilia Worrell. Once again, she's the chair of EIT Manufacturing Supervisory Board. Good to see you as well, Cecilia. Let's see if we can get her on the screen. There she is. Welcome from Stockholm. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well. I'd love to be with you in Berlin next year. Fingers crossed.
That's right. We said that last year, didn't we, Cecilia?
Yeah,
and actually, we had high hopes for this year, but as it is, okay, we're making the best of it. It's almost exactly a year since we last met, Klaus, as I said before, and I know that you've been unbelievably busy. Can you just give us a brief overview of EIT Manufacturing's second operational year and tell us if there have been any highlights so far?
Yeah, it was, again, a very exciting year, of course, with a lot of difficulties due to the COVID crisis. We are still in, you know, last year when we met, I said, hopefully we will overcome the crisis and we will go back to normal in the new year. Now we are still in the crisis. So, but nevertheless, we did very well. We are now at the end of our ramp-up phase. I think we set up a unique organization, distributed all over Europe. We have built up our 5 co-location centers, and we intend to build a 6th one next year. Besides that, we built 15 innovation hubs in other member states. So we are really a European-wide organization, and we are now ready to serve and support the European manufacturing domain in the transition towards the digital economy, towards the circular economy, and towards the decarbonization of industry. We have recruited, I think, an outstanding team. More than 60% of our employees are women, which I think is remarkable for a manufacturing organization. And we have more than 25 different nationalities within our teams in the co-location center and in the headquarters in Paris. And besides that, we had a lot of successes already in the first 2 years. We launched our open innovation platform, Agora. If you have not yet registered, it should be the place where every manufacturer should be. If you have not yet registered, please register to Agora. We have launched in education our master school, our PhD program. Internally, we also, in the partnership, we also launched our online learning platform, skills.move. We will launch for the outside world next year, in the first quarter of next year. We connected to the European startup scene, and with our Boost Up Bridge, we had a successful pilot to connect corporates, existing industry, and startups. And you will see a lot more during the next 3 days what we have achieved already in the first and in the second year of our operations.
Well, it certainly has been an unbelievably busy year. I mean, I wasn't actually expecting quite such a long list. Okay. It's amazing. And Cecilia, just to come over to you, because we started last year with that inspirational slogan, be part of the change. And I'm just wondering if you are satisfied with the change that's been achieved so far. It's sounding like a lot has been happening. What still needs to change in Europe's manufacturing sector?
Well, it's mind-blowing every time Klaus comes forward with this long, extensive list, you could say, with amazing progress that we've made in only 2 years. I mean, our vision, as you know, is that global manufacturing innovation is made by Europe. And we have all these superheroes in Europe, the large corporates, the smaller companies, the IT sector, a very strong and growing startup scene in various parts of Europe. But these actors are not yet so connected as they should be. The potential, I think, that both Klaus and I and our whole management team and everybody else share is the unused potential to combining these forces with each other. And in addition to that, as the movie showed just recently, technology is racing forward. We have talked about Industry 4.0 for actually 10 years now. I find from my Swedish perspective, Sweden is an innovation leader, that companies here are really yearning and longing for more educations that fit the role of people in work. both blue collar and white collar people in the industry, they need to ramp up their education and their knowledge base to be able to take part of this transformation that we want them to do for the sake of a greener planet and decarbonization and all of these things. So we have a long list to do still.
Well, we do. And we will be talking about that all, of course. Just because you mentioned Industry 4.0, I want obviously Industry 5.0 is in the works. And I'd like to just ask if you could explain what that is exactly and how does it actually complement the 4.0, the existing Industry 4.0 approach?
Well, it does, because Industry 4.0, as everybody knows, was inaugurated in Hanover in 2011. And that was a lot about unlocking the potential of technology and digitalization to create higher value added in European manufacturing industry in order to be more competitive. There's all over the world, in the eastern parts of the world, in Asia, for example, a lot of countries that are very aggressive in their innovation speed, in their education speed, and their research speed as well. And we need to really approach that as a European continent. So I think it was an excellent move by Angela Merkel at the time. And a lot of things have occurred. I mean, the digital divide, I think, is smaller and smaller. Digitalization has happened a lot across manufacturing industry. And we see that a large benefit of the startup communities is to help bring maybe the large corporates to another innovation level. But nonetheless, there are still many factors that we need to be addressing. One of these is, as we all know, manufacturing is a very human-centered operation. We're not going to build any cars or any machines, or we're not going to innovate anything, any new technologies, or apply them if we don't have people that work with technology. So manufacturing, as opposed to many other industries, like maybe the chemical industry, for example, is very human-centered and very dependent on human beings. So Industry 5.0, the way I see it, is really refocusing on the role of human beings in manufacturing in order to have a more of a stakeholder type of capitalism, where industry is maybe both giving back to society, but also transforming even to a higher level to become more, smarter and more sustainable for the future. And this can only happen if people are re-centered, so to speak, in the center of these manufacturing enterprises.
Exactly. Thanks very much for enlightening us a bit on that. And we will go into it more later today, especially with our inspirational keynote. Now, Klaus, the theme, obviously, as we've just been talking, the future of manufacturing work, it is the hands on deck. In your view, what will be the main changes? How will jobs change concretely?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to mention the good news. I mean, at least to the latest studies of the World Economic Forum and also of the World Manufacturing Forum, the ongoing digitalization, robotization, automation of manufacturing will not necessarily lead to a decrease of the workforce. Rather the opposite. We will need even more people in the manufacturing domain. We have currently more than 33 million European citizens active in the manufacturing domain. But there is always a but, but we need people with a different profile. In the past, to say it in simple words, we had a lot of people in our factories and plants, less educated people that carried boxes, doing routine work at the assembly lines. Now we need very, very well educated people that program, manage, supervise, control the robots that carry the boxes, that doing the routine work. Yeah, and this is the significant change, and therefore education is the key for our existing workforce, upskilling, reskilling, but also within the universities and within the training institutes. We have the people in our factories and plants have to understand not only the hardware, the mechanics, they have also to understand the software and the informatics, which is connected now with all the things. In Industry 3.0, we talked a lot about embedded software that is embedded in the things. Now in Industry 4.0, we are talking about embedded hardware. Everything, every equipment in our factory and plant is embedded in an IT infrastructure, is connected to a digital backbone, is connected to other things. Yeah, and there we need people with an understanding of both worlds, the mechanical, the hardware world, and the virtual world, the software and the informatics.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, the emphasis on what this is going to mean for education is huge. Cecilia, just as you said, sitting in Sweden, an innovation leader, your thoughts on the most pressing challenges to overcome this human side of the transformation ahead?
Yes, and since EIT Manufacturing is part of the European, I would say, policy framework also to address challenges that various sectors have, I urge all of you listening in and those of you representing either industries or universities or other actors to look at the population pyramids across Europe. And they are not very positive. So we don't have unlimited access to young people entering the workforce. And I think we should all bear in mind that the diminishing number of young people entering the workforce are not all going to choose manufacturing. I mean, we are going to do our very best, Klaus and all of our teams, but we really need to focus much more on also reskilling the people already out there. Most people with a technical background and engineers and such people are already in the workforce, and they need to step up and get more training as they move along the workforce. And also when it comes to the large corporates and the smaller ones, you need to allow space in your everyday life as a worker or a white collar worker to get some training done. We can offer numerous courses, but you also have to find the space to take these into your work life.
Okay, so thanks for outlining some of those challenges. We will be talking about how to address them, and I'd like to just come back to you, Klaus, to ask, what are you hoping for over these next 3 days?
Yeah, I hope we
program we have once again.
Yeah, a full program we have for the next 3 days. And I hope you will get an impression that we have really set up a unique organization. And I think a knowledge and innovation community under the umbrella of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology is really a unique organization, bringing together education, innovation, and entrepreneurship, business creation. And this is our main task, to drive these 3 pillars, not in silos, but in an integrated way. When I opened our PhD program, my message to the first cohort of our PhD students was quite simple. I'm not that much interested in the paperwork you have to do and the peer-reviewed paper you have to publish. My interested in that you, in the context of the technology you are working on, you generate a new organization, you generate a new venture. Yeah, this is how we bring entrepreneurship and education together. And similar examples we find also with innovation and entrepreneurship and education and innovation. Yeah, this is our main goal, and I hope you will see a lot of such successful things we have built up over the last 2 years in integrating the knowledge triangle, integrating innovation, education, and business creation.
It's really also very much about making manufacturing attractive again overall,
of course,
to make it a desirable sector to be in.
We have still to bring the message across that manufacturing is not longer filthy, noisy, and all these things. Manufacturing is an exciting domain. My whole work also in the digital world, my whole part of my life also in the digital world. And I know the digital world is very exciting for young people, but there is still a physical world, and the physical world is as well exciting. Working with concrete things, producing for concrete things in a sustainable green production. And this is our main challenge for the future, to make Europe a role model for sustainable and green production.
Thanks very much. And I'm so glad that there still is a physical world. Yeah. It's really a huge relief. Any final comment from you, Cecilia, before we proceed?
No, I agree, of course, with what Klaus is stating, and we'll do our best with various actions to visualize work in manufacturing and to highlight young people entering this workforce, both through the PhD programs and master programs. And we also have very exciting activities connecting startups from universities or similar areas with the larger corporates that do need accelerators, you could say, to help them transform. So there's so much going on, and I wish everybody an interesting couple of days with us.
Well, thanks very much to both of you, Klaus and to Cecilia Worrell in Sweden, for those insights. And Klaus, of course, I'll be seeing you later on to close the day, and enjoy to you, Cecilia, from afar. All the best, and we'll be seeing you on day 3.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. It's time to move on to our first round of introductory speeches. And the first to take our virtual stage today is Maria de Grata Carvalho, and she's a member of European Parliament. She's also a former Portuguese Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation. She's also a professor at the Instituto Superior Técnico at the University of Lisbon and has long experience supporting science and innovation at European and national level, which means that she has a very deep understanding of how these different fields and strands can work together. And she's going to look at the future of manufacturing work for us from a broader European perspective. And so, Maria, it is a pleasure to hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm very pleased to be with you because I know the EIT, and I hope that you can hear me well. I know the EIT good. I have signs that you can hear me well. And I have followed the EIT since the beginning. Actually, I was a principal advisor of President of the European Commission, President Barroso, when he had the idea, it came from himself, the idea of proposing a EIT, and actually was one of my first files that I work when I was working in the European Commission before I became as a member of the European Parliament. As member of the European Parliament, now I was the rapporteur of the Strategic Innovation Agenda for the EIT for the following 7 years, for the period of 21 to 27. So I'm very happy that I'm today. It's such an important part of the EIT that is related to manufacturing. And actually, I'm a mechanical engineer myself, so I'm the professor of mechanical engineering in the University of Lisbon. And that is my profession. When I finish my work in the political, I will hope to continue also in my research and my teaching capacity as a mechanical engineer professor. I know the importance of manufacturing, and more than ever, Europe needs to regain what I usually call the culture of manufacturing. We have lost this culture in many, many sectors. We still have very good manufacturing, some sectors, but there are sectors that we have lost and sectors that we still didn't gain this culture, or at least to be on top, to be the most competitive in manufacturing some of the sectors. For example, you were discussing the digital and the physical world. But if Europe wants to be leader in the digital, also Europe needs to have the capacity to manufacture in the digital sector. We need to be able to manufacture the supercomputers, the microprocessors, the semiconductors, because we cannot be leaders in digital if we don't have the capacity to build ourselves what is required for the digital transformation. Of course, this does not mean to close Europe and to only consume and buy things that are produced in Europe. But if necessary, if you want, if it is needed, we know and we have the capacity to produce. And we can have the choice to import or to produce, to export, and that is what I consider the important strategic autonomy, to have the capacity to do it if it's required, if we decide to do it ourselves. And the ones that have the capacity, how do you gain this capacity is not to close doors, is to invest in research, in innovation, and in higher education, in education in general, because we require specialists at high level, but we also require intermediate level of specialists in manufacturing in many sectors. There is a big gap on capacities in very important technologies and mainly emerging technologies. There is a gap in Europe that we have to fill in this gap. And I have indicated, for example, the area of digital when manufacturing is so important. Again, in the area of green transition, all the clean energy technologies. And fortunately, we have a very good capacity in the manufacture of green technologies. Some we have lost the leadership to Southeast Asia, and we should regain some of this capacity. So very important, this culture of manufacturing. I was rapporteur of the 11 public-private partnerships. And I have included that cover many areas of the economy and society, from aviation to rail, to energy, to biotech, to health. And I have included this importance, the horizontal importance of manufacturing, and the importance of filling the gap on capabilities in capacity building, in having specialists and have a generalized knowledge of the population. That is also important in all the fields. And it's like this that we build a knowledge society. We also have to look at the fact that innovation and the nature of innovation has been changing, and along the last years, and especially in the last 2 years, to also as a consequence of the COVID, we look at innovation, and innovation is no more a linear process we have, where in the past we had fundamental research, technological development, pilot scale, demonstration, entering into the market. Now you have a much more cyclic approach, where the fundamental research is much closer to the application, to the market, to the innovation, that both parts need to interact to each other and work together. And we see the emerging more and more of technologies like the quantum computing, photonics, robotics, data, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and all that are present in the manufacturing. And we can see that the countries that have been successful and the societies that have been successful getting out of the crisis are the ones that have more capabilities in these new areas, that really have a bet on these new areas. And they do that in terms of the knowledge triangle, investing in research, investing in higher education and creating capabilities and capacities in these new technologies, and creating an ecosystem of innovation that is an ecosystem that allows ideas and the results of the research to flow into the economy and into society. And that is the secret for economic development nowadays. And if you look at the European programs, the one that translates exactly what is required to be done for the countries to grow and to get out of the crisis in a smooth way is the EIT, because the EIT really covers the knowledge triangle. It's the only European program that covers exactly research, innovation, and education. And as a rapporteur of the Strategic Innovation Agenda, I had the proposal that was very well accepted, enthusiastically accepted by all my colleagues as shadows and our political groups, to give again a big emphasis to education, because in the recent past, I would say that it was in the beginning of the EIT, the triangle, with a balanced approach to the three corners of the triangle. But we could feel that in some of the kicks, very generalized in some way, the higher education in the recent years has probably lost a bit of weight compared with research and innovation. And we want to refocus, to give back the balance and to refocus to the higher education, the PhDs, the postdocs, these capabilities that are so important for Europe. So it was one of the first, if you see in my explanatory statement of the EIT report, is the first measure that I include as the proposal of the European Parliament that was approved, that was after in the trialogue accepted by the three institutions, that we need to strengthen the higher education component of the EIT. And in many areas, but in manufacturing is crucial. We also have included a more openness, transparency, increase the visibility of the EIT. We also have including the link with the regions, with the regional innovation systems that are so important. We have created and strengthened what we call the regional innovation scheme, the result, the synergies with the recovery plan, with the structural funds are so important that these are anchored at the regions and at the member states. The simplification, that is something that I always include in my reports, try to simplify as much as I can, and very much related with the capabilities and the lack of professionals in these in manufacturing, but also in some of the emerging technologies, is the gender gap that we have in some areas in Europe. We really need to attract more women to digital. We need to attract more women to manufacturing. In manufacturing, we have still very low percentage of women, and we cannot afford to lose 50% of our potential in Europe, of our capabilities. So there is also an important role of the institutions, such as the EIT, to attract more women for the areas, because we really need to have more specialists in these areas, more PhDs, more researchers, more entrepreneurs, more persons that go to the industry and that are in a balanced way, men and women. So this is my main message. I hope that you have a very fruitful discussion. EIT is a very essential program for the future of European Union, because we really depend on research, innovation, and higher education, giving capacity to the people. And this is the future of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Maria de Graça Carvalho for pointing out, for that incredible overview of the EIT's activities and for outlining the knowledge triangle between innovation, research and development, and education. We nevertheless are talking about people during the rest of the day, Maria. So I just wanted to ask you what you perhaps see as the main challenges heading forward in these ongoing digital and green transformations when it comes to the European workforce in general, and where do Europeans have particular opportunities?
There are many opportunities of working in this transition, because both the digital and the green transition rely on the specialists that we have a gap in. We need more specialists in digital, informatic engineers, but data engineers, networks engineers that work on 5G, 6G, all that in infrastructures, and also on energy. On energy, we have also a very big gap on engineers and technicians both in renewables, grids, energy efficiency. We don't have enough. We are going to need a huge amount of technicians and engineers, for example, to reconvert our building. The buildings that we have in Europe need such a big transformation if we want to achieve the targets of energy efficiency. And a lot of this is the manufacturer is in the basis of all of this transformation. So a big opportunity for our youth people and that should like this. And I think that in order to attract more young people to these areas, we need to start earlier. At a very early age. In my own country, we had managed to do a big transformation to attract more researchers, more people to science through acting in the schools, in very young people. We did that for the physics, for the mathematics, but now we need to do the same for more these new technologies, the digital, the manufacturing, the energy. We need to do that in order to be able to attract more and to attract also young girls for the areas.
Thanks very much for those comments. Of course, coming back to the gender gap that you mentioned before, and to this issue of making the manufacturing sector, making people realize just how exciting it is and exactly what is going on, and a lot of need and opportunity for specialists in the digital realm. I'd like to thank you very much for those insights, Maria de Graça de Carvalho. Thank you for speaking with us today. And as you just saw there, our next speaker is Paul Rübig, and he is a former MEP and member of the European Economic and Social Committee. He's also a member of the governing board of the EIT, with deep roots in European industry and experience as an entrepreneur himself. So he's joining us to explore how organizations like the EIT can best support this process of upskilling the workforce that we've been talking about, which is going to, of course, be a major challenge in the coming years and already is. Over to you, Paul Rübig, for your keynote.
Yes, thank you so much for the nice introduction. I'm very happy that Klaus and Cecilia had done a lot of work to make EIT manufacturing a success story. And, you know, that's what we need in Europe, success stories. And Maria, I also have to thank you very much because the idea of creating this European Institute of Technology was born with Commission President Barroso. And I still remember, as I was coordinator in the ITRE group, in the committee, as Barroso asked us if we support this idea of an MIT within European Union. And then we said, maybe we don't like to have an MIT. We want to have something which is very special for European Union. And so we created the idea that the over 8 research programs where we put billions of euros into scientific research work, how can we bring it to the people? And the idea was to get the knowledge out of the billions which we invested in these programs. How can we get it into our education system? And in our education system means from the kindergarten to the university and from self-employed to industry and SMEs. So it's very clear that it's knowledge-based development where the base is excellence in research and development, which is necessary. And, you know, the European Research Council does a very good job to get this basic research and development and science. But we also need the speed in transferring research and development results into business, into jobs, into wealth creation. So EIT is the Europe's largest innovation system. Maybe you know that we created up till now 60 innovation hubs in Europe and outside of European Union. And I said the entrepreneurial education programs are key of our activities. Education, skills training, vocational training. And entrepreneurial not only means that it's an entrepreneur who has to do it. I think entrepreneurial needs also in the employees area, and that's where the European Economic and Social Committee, where I'm now rapporteur for the European research area, where the employees have a heavy impact how the progress in a company is done. And also in the administration of our institutions, we need more entrepreneurial thinking. And that's what you have to learn from kindergarten. That's what we have to implement into the university. And that's the base of innovative research projects, where at least there is a benefit for society. And the business creation and the acceleration service, which the EIT started, and we have a budget for approximately 3 billion euro for the 7 years of Horizon Europe, that creates impact into our society. And we know that the global challenges are quite big. If you know that, as an example, EIT raw materials is the base for all of manufacturing, that it's completed by EIT Digital. And that manufacturing, of course, needs health for the employees and the people who work in this area. We have to have good food for them to have a good performance. So EIT food. And of course, without energy, energy, we have no access to production. And to see that the mobility plays a key role to bring people together. Urban mobility plays a role, but also mobility in our virtual world, where we can get the silo and pipe strategy to a much better performance, because through machine learning, we can see which pipes of communication are necessary. And for me, as former chair of the European Parliament Science Committee, to say so, the STOA committee, STOA is Scientific Technology Options Assessment. It was crucial to get this strategy done in the right way. So EIT up till now supported 3,800 ventures with approximately 1,400 products and services which are new, and more than 10,000 jobs created. And for startups, at least we raise 3.9 billion of external investment. And we graduated up till now 3,800 masters and PhD students in thousands and more training programs. And I still can remember my first job in education was a vocational training school in Austria called WIFI, where we had 1,200 teachers who came from the daily work in the evening to our education unit and then trained the people what they did on the day business. So and that's where I think it's matching the question of the unicorns, companies which more than 1 billion euro. And up till now, we had success stories like Northvolt, supported by EIT InnoEnergy, or Lilium Aviation, backed by the EIT climate area. I think it's good that these unicorns have shown how important it is from scratch to support this knowledge transfer. And therefore, I'm very happy that we understand that technology push innovation and market pull innovation on a global scheme is crucial, and that our excellent education in our education areas is also filled by the idea of entrepreneurship. I think that's what the main message is. EIT is there to seed entrepreneurial thinking for the benefit of the people. Thank you.
Thanks very much to you, Paul Rübig, and first of all for underscoring really and clarifying the structure of what EIT has been up to, and mentioning the success stories, but underscoring this importance of STEM education and what Maria said, of course, starting early, and yet related to our summit theme, which is the future of manufacturing work. We do have to look at the people who are out there already. How can organizations like EIT Manufacturing support the upskilling of the human workforce, which is sort of being looked at as probably the biggest challenge in the short term?
Yes, I think the higher education initiative is one where industry needs qualified people. So how can we skill the people? How can we upgrade their knowledge? And therefore, the education programs which are rolled out in a lot of universities of European Union are the base for success stories driven by our people who are members of the EIT Manufacturing. Skills around the world are very different, and I think we have to see in any culture which type of skills are necessary, and new learning and teaching technologies for individualized training and learning, I think sets the base of a success story where EIT Manufacturing is in the lead.
And thanks for pointing out all of the ventures and endeavors that are underway in that area already. Now, just one more quick question, because we talk about the role of SMEs as the backbone of the European economy. How do we go about getting more of them involved in the EIT and enable them to make the most of the EU support that's available?
You know, we have 25 million SMEs within European Union. They do 50% of the GDP, they have 80% of the jobs, and they create 2/3 of the new jobs which are on the market. So getting the communication right and using machine learning to understand where are the white pages and white spaces of knowledge, how can we transfer the right knowledge just in time to them when they are in need of knowledge. And I think that makes SMEs so fruitful in the development, because from the startup, which is the most difficult phase, to the scale up, to the unicorn, it's a long way. And in this area, EIT Manufacturing has a network of supports which are crucial for being part of this success story.
Well, thanks very much for alluding to that. We will be talking a lot more about SMEs on day 3, but thanks very much for those insights so far to get us started. And thanks for being with us, Paul Rübig. Thank you so much. Well, it is time now for a short technical break, so do feel free to go grab a cup of tea. You do have that long, it's about 5 minutes, and we'll be back for session 2. See you then. Well, welcome back, everyone. And we've had a bit of a foundation laid for our discussions over the next 3 days, but we talk a lot about challenges. And so it's time for some inspirational, and I would almost go as far as to say visionary input. And for that, it is a pleasure to welcome Roberto Saracco. Now, he's a senior advisor at Reply. That's a network of specialized companies that helps customers innovate all along the whole economic digital chain. He's a senior member of the Institute of Electric and Electronic Engineers, that's the IEEE, where he leads the industry advisory board. And he also teaches a master course in technology foresight at the University of Trento. So he's in the business of looking forward. And he's joining us today from Turin, and he's going to speak about what's ahead of us, namely smarter factories and smarter people. So over to you, Roberto.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. Let me set up the thing. Okay, here we go. Okay, so thanks a lot for having me with you. I'm an old friend of EIT in general, and a new one for EIT Manufacturing since you're young. Well, over the last 300 years, manufacturing has owned its processes and adopted even more sophisticated tools, becoming more and more effective. Yet it has also become a cog in a very complex landscape, including supply and distribution chains, raw materials, environment, waste, energy. Now, any change in this landscape may have severe repercussion on manufacturing, and likewise, any change in manufacturing affects the landscape. The pandemic is showing that we are living really in a connected world, where global and local go hand in hand. Think of the disruption of the supply chain, a chip shortage. Now, matching efficiency with flexibility is the big challenge facing manufacturing. And for that, we need smarter factories and smarter people. Now, 5 years ago, in 2017, the Industry Advisory Board of the Future Direction Committee of the IEEE polled hundreds of CEOs and CTOs in a variety of industries, asking what they felt will be the impact of a number of technology on their sector in 2020. And this is represented, you see, on the diagram, on the circle diagram on the left-hand side. Well, as you can see from the complexity of the drawing, the clear message was, well, each sector is going to leverage and be impacted by many technologies. Now, 5 years later, in the spring, we asked the same question, and that resulted in a very similar diagram, the one on the right. However, if you look closely at that diagram, you can see that the healthcare and manufacturing sectors are seeing technology as having a greater impact than expected 5 years ago. And according to recent analysis, over 50% of the cost in healthcare, in hospitalization and so on, is tied to technology. In manufacturing, technology is also taking a significant portion of the overall cost, although it changes widely in different sectors to the point that it's really a nonsense trying to average it. What is also clear from this current assessment is the lower impact that 5G is having at the moment and the greater than expected impact of AI and digital twins. These are both signaling the need for becoming smarter and more flexible. Now, looking forward at 2025, the CEOs and CTOs are expecting a much bigger impact of 5G, both the private and the public 5G, a continuous and growing impact of AI, and a growing impact of AR and VR. This is indicating the trend toward the shift of operation to the cyberspace, again, a result of the trend towards smarter manufacturing. Now, stepping back and looking forward at the same time, we can see two trends. The augmentation of machines, becoming more effective and in the last decade smarter, along with an augmentation of humans. In the diagram, you can see on the right-hand side the steps of progressive machine augmentation. Applying better interfaces, narrow artificial intelligence, context awareness, human-machine cooperation, swarm technologies for an autonomous emerging intelligence, and in the future, machine awareness. On the left-hand side, you see the steps of evolution of human augmentation, from leveraging tools, which we always did, to leveraging the internet. Body augmentation, including exoskeletons, and augmentation using AR, or to brain augmentation by leveraging on machine knowledge and cognitive digital twins, with a future possibility of biological augmentation through CRISPR-like technologies. Now, these two trends are converging in a human-machine symbiosis. And although this is not expected to happen overnight, it's going to be a slow process. However, its impact are already on the horizon in front of us. Digital twins have become part of the manufacturing process, generated as a fallout of computer-aided design that results in a digital model of the future product. They're applied in manufacturing through computer-aided manufacturing and making use of that digital model through 3D printing and this kind of thing. Further on, they live through the lifetime of the product by receiving, through embedded IoT sensors, real or quasi-real-time status of the product. This is the progression that has brought a digital twin up to stage 3. And this evolution has been driven mostly by the quest for efficiency and cost reduction. What we are starting to see right now is the use of digital twin at stage 4 as a way to augment the product, its performance, by flanking services that are delivered via digital twin. It is part of the product softwareization process, and this is driven by both cost efficiency and revenue increase. On the horizon, the partial dematerialization of products based on autonomous digital twin at stage 5. Now, it's now several years that we've been talking about the knowledge society, isn't it? Now, for the first time, this knowledge society is kicking back to us, paving the way for a change in the way we look at knowledge and acquire it. We are starting a transformation from knowledge to executable knowledge. Now, mind you, we have always needed executable knowledge. Having knowledge stored in the library is of very little use in everyday life, including manufacturing. What is needed is to have such knowledge making an impact and to translate knowledge into execution. And for that, we have been using brains, that is, skilled, knowledgeable people to carry out activities. Now, what we're starting to have today are machines that are embedding knowledge and can execute it. IBM published an article in 2018, Designing Better Machines. And SAP, too, is working on these, and they have called this capability cognitive digital twins. And they are seeing these cognitive digital twins operating in factories, taking autonomous decisions by understanding the goal and being aware of the context. Now, these cognitive digital twins are reaching out from the factory to the supply and delivery chain. They interact with digital twins of product lines and products and form the knowledge landscape that is characterizing the company. Furthermore, we can expect them to interact and work together with the cognitive digital twin of companies' employees. Now, these latter are growing in knowledge as they interact with other cognitive digital twins, and obviously as their physical twin engages in activity and continuous education. Now, the area of personal cognitive digital twin is a brand new one, and it's being studied by IEEE through several companies, and it's part of the general trends toward massively distributed intelligence. Now, the pandemic has forced many industries to shift whatever was possible to the cyberspace. And knowledge was already part of the cyberspace, clearly. But now knowledge embedded in people also shifted to the cyberspace as people operate from remote. And leveraging knowledge from 1 kilometer away is the same as leveraging knowledge from the other side of the world. And this is already changing in some companies the way HR will look at human resources. It is a direct fallout of digital transformation. Companies that are lagging behind in the capability to leverage distributed, delocalized knowledge, both in humans and, most importantly, in machines, are going to face an uphill competition from those that are. We're moving toward a cooperation at knowledge level between humans and machines. You see cobots. And we are moving toward knowledge as a service that will also become embedded in products as a service of expert on demand. Now, this is part of a more general transformation of industry. and manufacturing, of course, toward product standardization, as I mentioned before, a transformation that impacts both the product and the way we design, manufacture, and operate it, up to the end of its life cycle. The manufacturing involves humans and machines, and it always has. Adding cooperation at the knowledge level, and this is something new, a process that is going to enrich both the knowledge of humans and, for the first time, the knowledge of machines, because machines are learning from us. Artificial intelligence and advanced interfaces based on AR and VR will clearly play a pivotal role, along with digital twins as bridges between the physical and the cyberspace. With digital twin, have a specific role of customizing knowledge to the interacting parties. At the same time, this transformation accelerates the clusterization of products and their use to deliver services. Now, a facilitating role in this transformation is played by the digital spaces used as shared interface in the ecosystem of producers and users. Gaia X can be an important initiative in this respect, but Gaia X will only be as good and effective, impactful, as its constituency is able to guide it. And in this respect, I feel that EIT Manufacturing should lead in the area of Gaia X digital spaces, in the manufacturing area, of course, and be the one to evaluate their effectiveness and perhaps be the guardians of these digital spaces. As a final point, I would like to stress that we are creating machines, ever smarter ones. And we need to be smart, actually, to be able to leverage on those machines, to be smarter. It is only by looking at the whole landscape in terms of symbiosis that we will not face the nightmare of machines taking the upper hand. We are surely moving toward the smarter factories. Smarter because they will reach out beyond the boundary of the factory, encompassing the supply, delivery chain, following the operation and the end of life of products, with a constant eye on the environment and energy sources. To accomplish this extension of factory reach, we need smarter people. And here again, I see an important role for EIT Manufacturing to look at the broader picture and help in educating smarter people. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Roberto Saracco, and for an incredibly interesting and as I said, visionary. I mean, it's visionary with a big V in terms of this presentation. Mentioning that the pandemic has really shown how interconnected we are, and that technology is not only going to impact everybody, but is already actually impacting everybody much more than we expected, and even than the experts expected. So you talk about this human-machine symbiosis, Roberto. I do have a question there, because it sounds a bit scary, and that you've mentioned, us becoming embedded into products, and yet that we will continue to have the upper hand. Can you just explain in a bit more detail what this means, what this new symbiosis will look like?
Okay, we have seen the growth of artificial intelligence that is basically able now to make use of a smaller set of data. And this basically means that the machines can now operate in smaller environment in terms of data, like the manufacturing plant, and learning. And we already have example of robots that are looking at people around, at other workers, human workers, and learning from them. But it goes both ways, okay? Because also the humans are learning from machine, because now machines have knowledge, they are executing this knowledge, and they can express this knowledge in a human understandable form, so that the humans engage in a process of continuous education through machines. I think that this is going to be a challenge, but also a very big opportunities, particularly for EIT Manufacturing, to try to see whether their education area, which we have listened to previous speakers, is so much important from Europe, okay, can also be delivered through the factory floor, not just in some classroom, okay, as we used to do and we will continue to do, but also through machine. Can we develop machines that teach people as they are using them and they learn one another? This is a sort of symbiosis that I think we should be looking after.
I guess what's really the most striking here is the incredible complexity of what you've just described. And of course, as you mentioned when we spoke earlier, one runs the risk of underestimating other factors that will definitely influence the adoption of technologies around our different regions, if we're just looking at Europe, for instance. What do you see as the biggest human challenges that we face in this transformation? What issues do we need to take into account there?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, we are living in a very, very connected world where connection is no longer just across the value chain or even across an ecosystem of companies working to a product. It's a connection with the users, with people, okay? And we are going to have with Industry 4.0, we're starting even to have that the user are part of the design because the way they are using the system or the product is going to affect the design of new functionalities and new products and so on. So we really need to have this human-centered vision that is part, I think, of that. And I think it's significant the fact that in Japan, they are not talking about Industry 4.0, they are talking about Society 5.0. Saying that everything is actually an evolution of society and industry is part of that. It's an enabler and it's also being impacted by that.
That's a very interesting point, and we'll take that forward with us, Society 5.0. Thank you very much, Roberto Saracco, for these very inspiring presentation, and we hope to speak with you again soon.
My pleasure.
Well, dear participants, coming up later on, we will have a panel discussion on the people-driven transformation in the world of manufacturing. And as a warm-up, we'd like to launch a relevant poll for that. So let's have a quick look at the poll question, if we can get our team to bring it up here. And I will also read it out so that everybody can absorb it. In your view, what is the biggest people-related challenge that the manufacturing sector needs to address for the dual green and digital transformation? And you can choose the most critical challenge. You've got a choice of A, properly identifying future skills, B, reskilling and upskilling the current workforce, C, finding, attracting and retaining talent, or D, getting people on board for the transformation. So you can take a moment or two to put an answer in for that, and we can use that as a basis for our panel discussion later on today. And with that, it is time now for another short break, so you can get up to speed on EIT manufacturing activities in the virtual expo area that I mentioned earlier on this afternoon. That'll be about 30 minutes, this break, so we'll see you back here at 13:44 or 45 about that for our panel discussion. Keep an eye on your screen, and we'll close the day with that. Until then, alles Gute and enjoy. And a warm welcome back, everyone. Hope you were all able to get a bit familiar with some of what's been going on in 2021. And before we go to our panel discussion, which you just saw announced there, we've heard a lot about all those partners out there. So let's take a quick moment to meet some of them and learn about how they are driving the future of manufacturing. As you can see, there's a lot going on out there, so glad that you're part of the action. It's time now for our panel discussion for today, day one, and we've entitled it A People-Driven Transformation for Manufacturing, obviously in keeping with our theme. And we heard it earlier, the digital transformation and the fifth industrial revolution will continue to redefine manufacturing jobs of the future. And I thought it was a very interesting point there when we talk about keeping things human-centered that Roberto Saracco, our inspirational keynote there, mentioned that we should actually be thinking of this as society 5.0. So obviously leaders and workers alike will be needing to embrace a new work environment, one that is expected to blend advanced technologies and digital skills with our uniquely human skills. And so here to talk about this is a distinguished group of panelists, and please allow me to introduce them. Hans-Jörg Stotz is a board member at Festo Didacti SE, and that's the world's leading provider of equipment and solutions for technical education. Welcome to you, Hans-Jörg. And Lucia Chierchia, is managing partner at Jellify. That's an innovation platform that connects high-tech B2B startups with traditional companies to innovate processes and products and business models. Also joining us is Christina Wagner, who is the Vice President, Corporate Research and Director of the Robot Experience at KUKA. And that is a German manufacturer that many of you will have heard about. They make industrial robotics and systems for factory automation. Fredrik Eliasson is Competency Development at Volvo. He's also the Vice President at Volvo Group University, so also very involved in education there. And last but not least is Željko Pazin, who is the Executive Director of EFRA, and that is the European Factories of the Future Research Association, for those who aren't up on all the acronyms just yet. Welcome to all of you. And can I see everybody on my screen? I can. Hello. Hello. Nice to have you with us. Hello. Now, I'm just going to throw the first question out to all of you, and I think I'll go in order because we are talking about a people-driven transformation. From your different perspectives, tell us what kinds of jobs will be emerging in the future that are completely new or that will change considerably. And I'll start with you, Hans-Jörg Stotz.
I mean, if most of the jobs that we know change, but if you're asking really kind of what are the completely new jobs, there's a lot of discussion around data scientists on the shop floor. So how will people understand production data in the context of production? So that is definitely one area of jobs that we will see emerging that's new. And I would also say that the topic of co-creation, design is a thing that will come closer to the shop floor in relationship to the mix between software and hardware. That's two things that I would see.
Thanks very much. And Lucia Kierke, I'll come over to you. What do you see changing most dramatically on the job front?
Yes, I agree. There's a change also in existing jobs at both responsibility and competence levels, I would say along two dimensions. First, job will more and more leverage hard technology competencies that are core for your company, but also combined with the ability to understand the potential of emerging technologies that today are not yet core for the company. It is not just about, the typical traditional, I would say, ability to expand the core competencies. It is about, otherwise it would be a never-ending story. It is about the ability to get access to external experts and use them to accelerate innovation. So it is about open innovation, I would say. And second, techno-business mindset as a business driver, since most innovation has, of course, a technology enables, but also a disruption in the business model itself. Thinking about manufacturing, let's think about the servitization model in manufacturing that are changing the rules of the game, of the competitiveness itself.
So open innovation in the sense that it's two-way in a way, and obviously will have has as always huge implications for communications. Christina Wagner, your comments on what you see changing most dramatically in terms of jobs.
Yes, so for that I see sort of two dimensions also. On the one hand, we see that, of course, automation is like a key factor in manufacturing. And currently it's mainly when I'm talking about robotics, then you tell the robot how to move. This will for sure change in future. So you will rather say the robot what task he needs to solve. And if you want to do so, you need like this technical and feature preconditions. And there I see, like Hans-Jürgen said, I see on the one hand data scientists, but also specialists in artificial intelligence and information technologies, which will be more and more relevant in the automation area. And then on the other hand, what I also see due to the fact that automation is now also going to sort of manufacturers that are not that much experienced in automation. I see there also a lot of jobs when it comes to setting up a system that is easy to use and that is providing a seamless journey. And for that, for sure, you need much more UX designers, which is also sort of new to our business. Not really new, but in that crucial importance, I would say it's new.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And Frederick, I'm going to come over to you to ask what you see emerging in the future.
The thing that excites me most in this world is that we don't really know. We don't really see that. We have an idea and we see a few things, but as all these industrial changes that we have seen, that there are things today in front of us that we don't know, so to say. And that's, so to say, the journey we are taking right now. I think we are seeing a few steps ahead, or we can imagine a few steps ahead, especially connecting to everyone, what everyone had said before, but especially connecting to that everything will be more digitalized. So we need to visualize things and be much better to interpret these visualized methodologies, etc. That's for sure done before, but we have done it more with the experts or researchers. But now we need to take that all the way to the people that actually is working on the floor. So we need to we need to imagine ourselves that there are a lot of jobs that will, where we need to make it easy for the people that actually are going to do the production or the activities. But I agree with the other, UX and AI and all these will come, and of course that will be part of it. But we don't really know if that is puzzle pieces for the new things that will come, or is that will be the major thing. So for me, I think it's an exciting journey that we stand in front of, because we don't see all the way what's in front of us, and that has not happened for many years that we are in such a transition, and that's really exciting, I would say.
I'm glad that you're underscoring the exciting aspect of it. Obviously, with all these unknowns out there, it really is new territory in so many ways. And we'll get back to making it easier for the people on the floor with our next question. But I still have to get to Željko Pajin to see sort of what you see coming in the future in terms of entirely new jobs or competencies that we'll need to develop.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. I mean, I fully agree with what was said until now. I think digitization, the data, the digital aspect will shape in the next years our environment, and hence the companies and the job environment that we are in. And as Fredrik says, I mean, I think change is happening so fast in the last years, and it will continue happening so fast in the next year. So it's difficult to predict. And then also corporations are so creative in creating new posts and new names. So this is something that develops, evolves. Nobody can predict this. But I think the data, the digital aspect will certainly have a big role. And then I think the whole environmental dimension. Yeah, I think it will change also companies and continue changing them, and the whole ethical aspects that come with buying a product. What does it mean, if consumers change their behavior? So of course, companies are adapting to this. So I think the digital aspect, the ethical aspect, and the environmental aspects will shape in the next years the change management which will take place.
Thanks very much, Željko. All of those things linked very much to the people that we need to keep at the core of manufacturing, and that is, of course, our theme. So I'd like to just to ask you what you see as the priority actions to ensure that things, as Fredrik just said, making it easier for people on the shop floor, bringing all of these technologies into actual practice. Where do you see the priority to ensure that people remain at the core of this manufacturing sector here in Europe? And perhaps I can go right back to you, Hans-Jörg.
I mean, there's two groups if we talk about manufacturing which are most affected. I mean, we haven't talked about the R&D side of the house yet. I think there's a lot of change in product engineering at the moment, where we move a lot from mechanical to electrical engineering and to software, and I think that's a big space. But that's the easier part to tackle, because people there, I think, are not kind of embedded in the production process. While when you go to the shop floor, I think the challenge is much more significant, because I think, first of all, people there have no access very often to digital devices. I mean, we don't equip people on the shop floor with a PC. I think, how do you reach those people? And getting people out of the production line to train them has an impact on OEE. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, how do you deal kind of upgrading, reskilling people on the shop floor? And what we see is there's so much change in the existing professions, like mechatronics as being one example. If you look at kind of the different jobs, like electricians for system technology, electricians for automation technologies, what we train today is very different from what we trained like 10 years back. So the key thing is, how do you get people who have been going through training 10 years ago back into the vocational training centers, into those places where they can actually spend time? So making time available to them is the biggest challenge.
Okay, that's very interesting. Really a very practical problem. Lucia, what are your thoughts?
As Fredrik said before, we don't know yet what we can call the final landscape. So what we can do as priority actions is to prepare the ground. First, we need to create an agile and robust process and mechanism and even model to get access again to external competencies. And I say competency solution partners. So it would imply partnership with beyond our value chain, even beyond our sector. It could imply cross-industry collaboration model or even co-petition model. Second, to prepare the ground, we need to proceed step by step or prepare a step-by-step evolution towards a sort of liquid organization. That means a revised decision process that is based on a distributed company knowledge rather than vertical roles and responsibilities that can work on the consolidated core competencies. But when we are designing the factory of the future, probably we need an additional piece that we have to build together.
Thanks very much, Lucia, for that. And Željko Pažin, I'd like to ask you what you see as priority actions.
Well, I see several. I think we need a lot of investment and cooperation with governments. So all these Industry 4.0 initiatives that are happening at that national, regional level, the initiatives at European level. So I think, it's about cooperation between society, governments, industry to reach a consensus. Where are we going? And I think that's why such frameworks are important and needed. So I think it's to create a discussion, and then through this discussion, the mindset of managers will change, of politicians. So yeah, I would say a kind of a new a consensus in industry and in society. Where is this going, and what is needed in the future? And then second, I would say, we need to come back to you said it, that the topic is to bring the humans in the center. So technology should be there to assist humans, and we should make it easy. I think Christina mentioned it before. It cannot be the case that you need to, study informatics to get a good job at a good company. The technology needs to adapt so that it's easy to train people, that it's easy to use technology, and I think this will keep us busy for the next years. And Hans-Jörg mentioned it. That's why we need research, why we need demonstration activities, test beds, all these facilities where we can experiment to make technology easy to understand, to be acceptable, especially by the elderly workforce. That's so important to bring everybody along, and their technology simply needs to adapt to our needs to make it easy to use.
Very interesting points there. The list is growing longer and the challenges are huge, but I think I still have to come back to Christina to talk about priority actions that you see for keeping people in the center of the transformation.
Yes, so I would agree to everything what Hans-Jürgen said regarding R&D. So there I also see the trend that we need to invest or increase the software know-how on the one hand, and then also taking advantage of maybe further educating mechanical engineers to understand the software and IT patterns in the sense of what does it mean to set up a scalable service across several infrastructures. This is very crucial in order to be successful in the future automation area. This is one thing. And when it comes to the shop floor, to the users, I would believe that we have sufficient technologies in place to take advantage from the know-how we have on the shop floor, providing them easy-to-use devices so that they are equipped through digital devices to even more effectively work on the shop floor. I know that's a way to go because the infrastructure is not there yet, but I think when we will have easy-to-use solutions, it will be very much connected to what we know from everyday life, how we use smartphones, how we interact with services which are cloud-based. And I would dream that this kind of infrastructure and usability we would see on the shop floor in the upcoming years.
Thanks very much for that. And Frederick, I'd like to come over to you because Lucia mentioned this very interesting term, fluid organization. And I mean, in the wake of this pandemic, many companies have been rethinking their work architecture, but also their organization of work to attract and retain a lot of this critical talent that we're going to need and respond to what some are calling, we've seen a lot of it in the press, the Great Resignation. So in light of that, what do you think the manufacturing sector should be focusing on?
In line of that, I think it's not what we should be for. I think what we need to do is that we need to adapt to the both faster speed in change and adapt to the, so to say, new situation. And that goes, I think it was in that Seiko that you were part of that, describing that the whole ecosystem needs to change faster. It's not good enough that we work with the skills and competence of our employees and everyone that works and demand that they will change. And of course, we know that the technology will change, but the whole ecosystem, the governmental, the regulations, the way that we are doing business on, everything needs to adapt to the new situation. I think the speed of this is increasing so much because the transparency of the whole flow due to the digitalization is increasing. And people, everyone, what was just seen by a few before is now seen by a lot of people. That means that the demand for productivity is much higher and people need to be more proactive, looking further ahead in the chain, see what the effect is, and then going back. So the adaptation in the whole chain will have to speed up. I think that is what is in front of us, and that is what you are referring to, that the organization is changing, etc. And I think we will see that it will go. That will happen much more often. That the organization change, that we develop our skills much more efficiently all the time. That we demand from the government and the legislation holders and the industry and the universities and everyone that what was good enough 2 years ago is not good enough today. And that is what I think we need to adapt to, all of us here in that. And it's more like an effect that we need to adapt because the change is going fast in order to keep up.
Željko, I'd like to come back to you for your thoughts on that, because I mean, how do we sort of balance all of these tasks that you've laid out here as priority actions, for instance, some of which we know are going to be really, sort of cogs and wheels when it comes to getting upping the investment and working with governments. There's a lot of efforts underway, obviously, but technology needs to be made to be easy to use, you've said, and yet there's this speed, this adaptation speed that the entire industry needs to really get on board for in order to also to capture the talent out there. Your comments on how to sort of combine those two things.
Yeah, well, I think I'm quite positive for the future. The manufacturing industries. Yeah, the COVID crisis and all these changes that is happening, be it in society, be it artificial intelligence, the whole digitalization. It doesn't happen only in manufacturing; it happens in banking and many other sectors. So I think all companies are going through changes, and and it's all about being as good or better than the others, and with this you retain your workforce. So I would say competition is good, if I think people do change sectors, but I think manufacturing has a lot to offer. I have a son, I would love that he gets a decent job in Siemens, in Bosch, in the car industry. I think it stands for technology, for safety. All these companies pay taxes. They are part of a society. I think I'm positive. And yeah, as you say, there's a lot to do. To think only of the elderly workforce, it's both. It's on the one hand to upskill them, on the other hand to keep their knowledge. I know companies that are re-engaging retired people just for the knowledge and the skills they have to train the others who just arrived. So I think every company will need to look for a way and somehow it will work. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned the older generations that are out there. Obviously, skills are the next big topic that we really should tackle. According to some estimates, obviously half the existing workforce will need to acquire new skills. So that's quite a challenging prospect. And according to the poll that we did earlier with our audience, the poll was also conducted on LinkedIn. I think the most pressing challenge that was seen by our respondents in terms of reskilling and upskilling the current workforce, that was, in fact, what they saw as the most pressing people-related challenge, tied, I think, with change management and onboarding, which has to do with a lot of the things that you've been talking about as priority actions. So, Lucia, I'd like to come over to you. Do you agree with that? Change management and onboarding, reskilling and upskilling of the current workforce, do you agree? And which skills will be particularly critical when we get to that point?
Yes, I fully agree. And I think that probably if we need one word to summarize the challenge in terms of the skills evolution, I would say entrepreneurship. That is valid not only for manufacturing, but especially manufacturing that is really evolving. It is about corporate entrepreneurship as a new leadership style that is a mix of hard and soft skills. Just to clarify, a good manager, a good employee typically is the one who is able to take the right decision at the right moment based on numbers, data, facts. Actually, people, not only managers, but everybody, engineers, need to drive companies or projects in an uncertain context. So we need a totally new style, a new approach, new model, and even new governance to drive and orchestrate or facilitate the decision process. Even in manufacturing, especially in manufacturing, I mentioned before the servitization model. This is a challenge because it creates new revenue streams for many manufacturing companies beyond the physical product. So we need this kind of DNA evolution, I would call, more rather than skills evolution in people. And probably it implies that the kind of skills or mainly profiles that we need are hybrid animals, I would call. So a mix of engineers and entrepreneurs together into the factory.
Thanks very much for that input. Hans-Jörg, I think I'd like to come over to you. Do you agree? And what do you see as the skills that will be particularly critical?
And there was a lot of good kind of discussion before on the topic of uncertainty and change. I mean, we all agree on the IT piece, and we know that you can't simply transfer a mechanical engineer to software developer in one day. That won't work. I mean, so at the end of the day, IT is one piece that we all know, but there's elements of security, safety, environmental topics around this. The most pressing thing, I think, is the ability to learn. And given that there's so much uncertainty and the technologies that are coming in are so immature, I think it's important to have multidisciplinary teams to come together and drive this jointly and actually explore. I think changing the learning culture in our companies is a key element, allow for kind of remote learning, mobile learning more, and then I think to experiment is, I think, way more important than just highlighting one particular skill.
Thanks very much. So ability to learn and changing learning cultures, entrepreneurship mentioned by Lucia. Christina, I'd like to come over to you. Do you agree, obviously, that upskilling and reskilling of the workforce is the most pressing challenge? And where do you see the biggest skills gaps?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And also to everything Lucia and Hans-Jürgen said. So what I could imagine, so we have, on the one hand, we have an existing workforce and we have very good people. And for those, of course, we need a lifelong learning. And what I have observed is a fundamental skill I need to see from the people is they must be able to understand in which thinking logic they are currently in. That's very crucial. So because the patterns of, for instance, hardware versus software are different, just different patterns. And you don't need to understand every nitty-gritty detail. You just need to understand the patterns of how things work. And this is also true when it comes to new sort of business models and entrepreneurship, what Lucia mentioned, because to push, for instance, disruptive, innovative products, you find yourself in completely different processes and business models than in your classical business. And both are very, very valid, and you sort of need to understand in which game I'm currently in, and how do I orchestrate the transformation of both.
Thanks very much. That's extremely interesting. I'm just thinking that what we've been talking about, obviously there's this incredible focus on high-end skills, but there are also going to be an awful lot of new challenges facing new collar occupations as all this digitalization drives all the changes we're talking about in traditional production. So how do we take them along on this journey and upskilling measures? How do we see that happening? And perhaps I'll go to stick with you, Christina, for that.
Yeah, so I would think that there I see rather the opportunities relieving from, for instance, heavy physical tasks via automation technology and providing, as I mentioned in the early beginning, easy to use equipment so that they get a training on the job and will also upskill their know-how, but just doing it, not intensive, so not necessarily intensive trainings, what I see. It's rather having the opportunity, and maybe this is a skill that needs to be sort of more fostered, is to abstract the know-how they currently have in order to guide the automation equipment appropriately.
Thanks very much, Jelko. I want to come over to you because you mentioned your son. Obviously, we're talking about huge skills gaps, but if you were to start studying right now or start giving advice to your son, what would you tell him to focus on?
Oh, difficult question, because I work for a manufacturing company, so out of my title, I should say he should study engineering. But in fact, I studied economics and management. So, I didn't do this. But I think this management social aspect combined with technology and engineering, I think with this you have such a safe future in the next 30 years. So I would say either management and kind of a social study or something with technology, if you like technology. I would say one of these two.
Thanks very much for those ideas. And Frederick, I'd like to come back to you at Volvo. What would you be thinking to advise young people today in terms of bridging these skills gaps with new education pathways?
For me, that has not so much changed over time. I think you need to be open and go where interest drives you, because that's where you make the most impact. I mean, that's the base. But like you said, Jelko, here, if you enter into the engineering world, of course, you get an understanding what the world is happening. If you love to work with the climate change that we are still in front of, you can affect a lot from the engineering side, also on the manufacturing side, but also drive those activities. So I think right now we have so much, the young people now have so much opportunities, and it's not right or wrong, rather where you choose to go. But I think what I would like to turn that around and say that if you look at us that works in industry, the job we have to do is to show and market how fun and interesting and what great challenges we have in our industry compared to, everybody is talking, I want to work at Facebook or Google or whatever. It's so fancy, yeah. But I can say it's much more diverse and much more fun to work in the industry because there you can do those things and tons of other things as well. So I think I would like to turn the question around and more say, what is up for us in the industry now to do to engage the young people to come into the industry and show them that You don't really need to be an engineer. You can be something else. You can be a financial guy and work in the industry. You can do something else because there are so much opportunities. So I would say, go for the industry, but go also where you want and where your sort of passion leads. But you will have a great opportunity in the industry.
Well, thanks very much for that input, Fredrik, because that brings me to the final question. We don't have much time left, but I do want to bring in, because the question of diversity really hasn't been discussed. And perhaps I can come over to Christina and to Lucia, how we have to also consider how we can create a more diverse workforce, attracting and inspiring more women, people from non-traditional backgrounds, for instance, to join and take up leadership positions and roles in this sector. What are your thoughts on that, just to finish off this panel? I'll go to you first, Lucia, and then come to Christina.
I think that we should ride the change that is there, that is about an innovation that is driven by ecosystem business model. So it means that companies can't just count on their internal resources or internal asset to make business. They have to create cross industries, but even complex ecosystem relationship. And so if we show to people that if you join my company, you don't just join my company, you join my ecosystem that is made by diversified industries, including even startups, for example, including relationship with the academic world. It means that you have the opportunity to live in a really diversified world and learn every single day. Because otherwise, I think that they have to get married with one single company forever, and young generation especially are afraid about it. While from our side, it was exactly the opposite 20 or 30 years ago. So ecosystem model probably is one of the key.
Absolutely. I think they're just not prepared to do it. I think they just they have so many more opportunities, and they feel they're entitled to that many more opportunities and want that kind of variety. Christina, what are your thoughts on this question of making manufacturing more attractive overall and to more diverse groups?
So I would say, on the one hand, we see in manufacturing it has a great benefit to the society. So we have this purpose aspect. So we increase we had to reduce heavy physical work to reduce it, for instance. We maybe even reduce transport distances and pollution. And so there is a clear purpose, which is for sure a good starting point to attract talents. And then on the other hand, we see that there are different disciplines becoming more relevant in automation and manufacturing. So we were talking about technologies on the one hand, but we were also talking about new business models, for instance, and we were also talking about user experience. So I would say it's a field where we have diverse skills that are needed. It has a great growth opportunity. And maybe the only thing that is missing, but it started to be pushed also, is we need a few role models so that the people are maybe attracted by different kind of leadership style.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, we've run out of time. I do have more questions, and I think we could go on for a very long time. So I'll mention that for the next summit. But just to sort of recap, a couple of the priority actions that were mentioned were things like upskilling, obviously, and taking the time to do this, preparing the ground, looking at step-by-step organizations, and possibly revising business models and organizational models to be more fluid, investment in cooperation with governments, and the fact that technology needs to be easy to use, and people like engineers and data scientists, AI specialists, and all those specialists in information technologies will be in very hot demand. So thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time to give those insights into this discussion. Hans-Jörg Stotz, Lucia Kierkia, and Christina Wagner, Fredrik Eliasson from Volvo, and Željko Pajin. Thanks very much to all of you for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Well, for our participants now, before we close today's event, we want to meet a few more of our EIT manufacturing partners. So to see what they're saying about their collaborations with the EIT, let's have a look at this. All that good stuff going on after that. And it is time to close the day with Klaus Beetz, who's joined me once again in the studio. And I'm so lucky to have you here. Honestly, otherwise I'd feel everybody's feeling so isolated in these days. Yeah, absolutely. Now, Klaus, it's been an incredibly busy day. What are your key takeaways from some of the interventions that we heard today and highlights of today?
First of all, a big thank you to you, Karen. You did an excellent moderation. Really, so I was quite impressed.
A pleasure.
And I was, by all the speakers and the panel, I was also quite impressed. I mean, Maria de Grassa Carvalho, her emphasis on education in the context of the Green Deal. And this is very important if you look at circularity. To teach the engineers and also even the pupils in the school that from the beginning, if they start the design of a new product, that they have the circularity in mind, that the degree of reuse is much higher in the future than now. We are building all around in Europe now plants and factories for batteries. And if you look for batteries, you need nickel, lithium, cobalt, graphite, and these materials. We don't have these materials in Europe. So this is a must that we have the circularity of these materials in the design of the batteries, but also in the design of the factories from the beginning.
That's where EIT raw materials comes in too.
Yeah, of course. And this leads us to the second point, where Paul Rübig especially emphasized the collaboration between the KICs. And this is really, we are a trusted family of trusted families, as all the KICs together. And we work a lot, and we are complementarity, as Paul Rübig mentioned, raw materials, manufacturing, and healthcare or urban mobility or others, where then the manufactured products are used. And this I really liked. And Roberto Saracos ending with the term Society 5.0. It was really great and interesting because, manufacturing is not a purpose by itself. We manufacture producing goods for people, by people, and for people. And if you look around, the food on our plate, the plate itself, the table where the plate is on, all our transportation means, all our communication means, all our healthcare equipment, all is the result of manufacturing. And we as human beings, at every time, we are in touch with manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So this really emphasized the importance of manufacturing also in the context of our society. And we are manufacturing employing a large portion of our workforce in manufacturing. And we talked a lot in the past about the digital divide, now about the divide with the vaccinated and non-vaccinated. And we have to be also careful that we have not another divide between the employed people and the non-employed people. Mm-hmm. And this will be definitely a challenge for the future, having a large portion of our society just occupied by Netflix and Super Soccer League. This will not be, this will cause a lot of tension in our societies. Yeah. And also in the panel discussion, I liked very much the emphasis on the human beings, on the people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I just want to add, there was a lot discussed about data scientists and data analytics and artificial intelligence knowledge we need. And I want to emphasize one topic. I mean, when we talk about data in a manufacturing environment, in a physical environment, in a factory or in a plant, we're talking about physical properties, about the acceleration, the movement of mechanical parts, the flow of liquids, the flow of air, vibration, magnetic, electronic fields, noise, all these physical properties. We need sensors, sensor networks to capture this data, and then we need mathematics. We need a sound mathematical base. We need mathematical algorithms, mathematical formulas, mathematical models that we really, in the cyberspace, in the virtual world, have a very precise representation, a model of the physical world. And so my emphasis is really, we need more mathematics.
You'll be very happy to know that I've put my daughter into a math specialized high school. So I guess hopefully maybe I've done something right. I thought it was also very interesting that Roberto Sarac was Society 5.0, that term actually came from Japan. So that's also an interesting nod, perhaps, to be looking at what other societies are doing and how they are developing their own models. So Klaus, I have another question for you. At last year's summit, you were calling for more investment to be poured into manufacturing, R&D, and innovation. We heard a lot about that from Maria today. How are things looking on that front? Because we did hear funding referenced a couple of times with the new recovery package and Horizon Europe, et cetera. Just quickly.
Yeah, I mean, so my statement from last year is still valid. And I mean, it came even more important with the consequences of the COVID crisis. We have seen how vulnerable our worldwide distributed complex supply chains are. And also what I mentioned before, the circularity, that we start to much more reuse all the materials that are in our products and going more as also seeing biomass as a very important raw material we have. Yeah, and so, but this will also not happen by itself. It needs the stimuli, it needs the investment by the government and by the society.
Okay, a final question. What can we look forward to tomorrow?
Okay, tomorrow you will see a lot of our projects we have executed this year with a strong focus on education, and I'm looking really forward on our award ceremony for the female women innovators. Because it was also mentioned in the panel discussion, you know, also our experience. I hired my management team, all the directors for innovation, for entrepreneurship, for education, the CLC directors. We had always less than 10% female applicants. Yeah, and this was also for me an eye-opener. We have to bring more women into the manufacturing.
Okay, well, we will be looking into that tomorrow, and we'll have our leadership competition finalists, 6 women innovators, and that is definitely something that we can look forward to on day 2. Thank you so much, Klaus, for that great overview and for being with me here physically in the studio today. I know you're sticking around, and I'll be able to bring you back in on day 3 for a number of things. I invite all of you out there, all of our participants, to have a good rest, to absorb all of the information that we've been throwing at you today, and tune in again tomorrow for a more detailed look at the EIT Manufacturing's activities amongst the pillars. And we will see you at 9:30 tomorrow morning sharp. Until then, from Klaus Beetz and myself, all the best to you and have a lovely afternoon and evening.